This is One-on-One. Welcome to a very special half hour. My colleague here, Rafael P. Romana, is with us. Raf, this is a great show because not only are we here for a few minutes, but we're here to introduce two very special interviews. A little bit later on, you'll see an interview with the President Emeritus of WNET, Dr. Bill Baker. But first up, they're going to be seeing an interview with our current CEO and President, Neil Shapiro. Raf, listen, it's the 50th anniversary of WNET.
We've been together 20 years of those 50 years.
We have.
That's 40% of its existence we've been
Yes.
with.
Now, do you remember, real quick, by the way, this is we'll introduce the two interviews, but this history's been an amazing one. Raf and I, 20 years, never a fight, at least in public. Do you remember the actual first night we worked together?
The first night we worked together was the Republican gubernatorial primary in 1993.
How about the
and
mayoral
you
election?
did all the talking.
I did all the Nothing's changed. Raf, do you remember the 1993 mayoral election as well as the gubernatorial election in New Jersey?
That's right, we did that. And
Who was our co-host?
Charlie Rose.
Charlie Rose,
That's
right?
right.
He's gone.
Right.
Whatever happened to him?
I don't know. I think he disappeared.
By the way, we are thrilled. One-on-one, you can catch us every night. You know I plug, right?
Yeah,
After Charlie Rose and Tavis Smiley, you can catch us every night on WNET.
So that was a memorable moment. Another memorable moment was our first pledge drive,
Don't go there.
live pledge drive together, where we had your toddler son there,
Stephen Gregory.
Yeah, what happened? He, in that pledge drive, he made his own contribution.
What Raf's referring to is the fact that, for those of you who know WNET, part of our 50-year history is that we ask for money. It's pledge, Neil Shapiro and Bill Baker have always said, you got to give, right? So Raf and I are doing a live pledge drive, and long story short, I brought my son on, who's now 20, a student at Fordham. He was 1 at the time, and we bring him on, and my wife said, don't do it, and he had a diaper, and it wasn't on too well, and Raf and I are there live on the set, and he crawled onto the set, and let's just say the diaper wasn't on secure, and we had a situation.
The situation, very memorable. I think
yes, so moving right along, Raf.
No, let's get more serious. We have done shows, 20 years, with two great presidents. And the thing is that I don't think people would know, for example, you've done art shows and I've done art shows. I don't think people would know who live in the tri-state area that we live in the center of the arts and cultural universe if it were not for WNET and the programs we do. And of course, needless to say, the political coverage
Sure.
and all the current affairs stuff that you and I have done.
Who else would do Metro Focus, which Rafael hosts every week, a great program. NYC Arts, which you contribute to big time. Right. And we're allowed to do Caucus, New Jersey, and you and I do Capitol Report. We're into our 17th, 18th year, right?
That's right.
And
we started with New Jersey People, Inside New Jersey, Inside Trenton, New Jersey Capitol Report.
But Raf, for us to do what we do on behalf of WNET, before we go to this interview with Neil Shapiro, how much of a thrill has it been for you? Because you've broadcasted on the commercial side with NBC as well.
Yeah.
How much of a thrill has it been for you?
When I tell people, they think I'm kidding. They think I'm selling. No, but I mean, a thrill is an understatement. It's in my life, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
And we've been partners together, and I don't know if it'll be another 20 years together because they'll be having to carry us out of here. But it's been a great 50 years for WNET. A little bit later on, as I said, you'll be seeing President Emeritus Dr. Bill Baker. But first up, from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center, both of these interviews come from there. This is a very compelling interview I did one-on-one with our President and CEO, Neil Shapiro. Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. It is my honor and my pleasure to introduce the gentleman you're about to see right now. He's Neil Shapiro, the President and Chief Executive Officer of WNET. Neil, good to see you.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see you.
Particularly in this particular location, the Tisch WNET studio.
We love it when you're here.
Yeah, no, we love to be here. I was telling you the other day that we've been taping over the last couple of days, and the folks that we brought in, Ed Asner and Gail King and Maria Bartiromo and so many other people playing here on Broadway, it's a magnet.
Yeah.
Was that the idea?
Yeah, it was two things. It was to take it was both to serve as a magnet for all the people who are close, but it was also kind of make a statement that we want to be at the forefront, at the intersection of arts and culture. In a way, and I say this with a certain amount of pride, but it is what it is. There's no other market like ours that can do this. We are the center of arts and culture, so we should be a part of it.
And it is, in fact, the 50th anniversary.
Exactly right.
Of WNET. Put things in perspective. We're about to see a clip from Edward R. Murrow, the first broadcast. All right. Why don't we do this? Let's take a look at Murrow, who will always be the giant in our industry, and then Neil will pick it up from there. Edward R. Murrow, 50 years ago.
Good evening. I'm Ed Murrow, and this is Channel 13, WNDT, something rather different. But in the words of Dylan Thomas, to begin at the beginning, this is educational television. It is 9 years old, quite young in the annals of education. But then television itself is but new come to being. This afternoon, there were 67 stations in the country. Tonight, this becomes the 68th.
Pick it up.
So you know what's great about that? It's great seeing it. It's great seeing with the cigarette smoke twirling up. It turns out that as they were doing this, there was actually a threat of a strike. Because in the earliest days of public television, right, there was an issue with, as all TV was, trying to grapple with what was going to happen. The Writers Guild's view was anybody who appeared on public television should be a member of the Writers Guild. I don't mean hosts like you and me. Anybody. If you were a guest, they wanted you to have to join the Writers Guild. Right? So it would have been, everybody in the city would have eventually been in the Writers Guild. So the station said, we can't do that. The writers said, we're going to strike, and they did. So Channel 13 went on the air for a day, and then went off the air for 2 weeks until they settled the strike, and then went back on the air. And that's in its earliest days already. You know, things were uncertain.
Is that part of our history, Neil, that we're always dealing with, whether it's Congress dealing with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and its potential impact on PBS, which has impact on us? Is it the constant uncertainty? And by the way, why did you, knowing that the only certainty would be uncertainty, why several years ago did you say, yeah, I'll take over, I'll be the boss? Why?
Well, first, you're right. This is the most complicated broadcasting system there is. Incredibly complex in all the ways we all work together, but it's also the most rewarding. You know, I spent 25 years of my life proud of what I did, but it was commercial television. And it's called commercial television because there are commercials in there. And everything you do is rated, and that's the way you measure success. And to do public television, do the work of the angels, and say, you know what, there's another way to think about what we do, which is, how does it affect people's dreams? How does it affect their minds? Can we lift spirits? Can we enlighten people? And that's the true measure of what we do. Well, it's great to be a part of that.
You know, it's interesting. For those of you who do not know, Neil was a former president of NBC News, and you see the world's coming together. American Graduate Day, 22nd. For those of you who may not have seen it, all day, how many hours?
7 hours.
I know he knows because he was here in the control room making it happen. Those worlds come together because WNET and other systems across the country in the PBS system describe the day, because I'm seeing people from your previous world in NBC and other networks, I mean top network people from across the country coming in, participating in what goal?
Well, the idea was to cast a bright light on the issue of dropouts and to say, in addition to that, actually there are things you can do to fix it. You can't just sit back on your couch and say, gosh, that's a big problem, what can I do? When in fact there are nonprofits all over the country, in our city and all around the country, who are doing interesting things. And the model was to say, let's do all that, and let's kind of borrow a little bit from the great skills of broadcasters who are great at interviewing people, and a little bit of stealing a page from some of the Jerry Lewis telethon, which was keep changing the talent all the time, because it's more what's going to happen next. So every half hour we had a new, different broadcaster, and every 7 minutes, at the end of the hour, we would cut away to local markets. So every station who participated could say, here's what we want to do.
They had skin in the game.
They did, and it was a chance for everybody. NJTV did some,
That's
13
right.
did some, because a lot of stations, especially in this area, have great local broadcasters too, and I wanted them to be part of the effort.
And the other thing about it, and by the way, the point I was trying to make, and Neil just reinforced, is that you could never do that on the commercial side.
Oh, you could never say, I'm going to spend 7 hours to talk about dropouts. Never happened.
Yeah. 50th anniversary. Some of the biggest challenges we face, and also obviously the biggest opportunities as well, at this point of our birthday.
It's a great question. On the one hand, it's a great way to look back and say, look at all the things we've accomplished. And then to say, let's build on that great foundation, but to say even the people who started us were pioneers. And when you dig into it, you see the big, bold chances they took, because then there was nothing. And they were really saying, we have to invent something. And now, 50 years later, we have to reinvent it. We need to keep all the essential qualities that mark great public television, intelligence, innovation, inspiration, but we have to realize we live in a new and different world, a world where it's a multi-platform world, a world where there are many distractions, a world where our audience has changed, and we need to make sure that our product changes with them too. So that's part of the challenge, is be up to date with what technology allows us to do. You know, this thing we're doing right here today, we couldn't do 10 years ago. You know, we couldn't be in a place where the control room is actually down the block.
That's right.
We couldn't be a place that we have robotic cameras. It would be much more expensive. So the fact that we wouldn't have a glass studio like this, and all those things have become easier and better to do. So in every way, we need to be up to date with the times without ever letting go of the fact that we are who we are.
But the other part of that, Neil, it's so interesting, is that membership. I mean, Neil's a broadcaster, a producer at the core. He just is. But a media executive, you juggling all these different pieces. The business side of things, and you and I talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
I would argue, knowing you for the last few years, it's not the most enjoyable part of your job, but it's necessary to do the other stuff.
Exactly.
That part, how much of the job is the business of figuring out, not just, hey, wouldn't that be a great idea for a program, but how do we pay for it? How do we do it most cost effectively? How do we...
Yeah. I'd say I probably spend 30 to 40% of my time worrying about that. And you're right, if you don't worry about that, you can't do anything else. Right? And we do live in a place where we have tons of ideas. When I get to work with some very smart, innovative people, I think we both realize we're lucky to work in that kind of environment. But you're right, the challenges are unique. When I was at NBC News, they said, here's a bunch of money, don't spend more than we give you. And by the way, if you want to spend more money in Iraq and less in Afghanistan, go ahead. Don't spend more at the end of the year. Here, it's not only we don't necessarily have the money, but it's, you know what, actually that money only is for Iran. You can't spend it in Afghanistan.
That's right.
So we have people who give us money and they also target what they give us. But I think the key thing here is how important membership is.
Yeah, membership, that's the transition.
And there's no real correlation in the commercial world. There's no obligation in the commercial world. You just watch. Right? Here, people really do cast a vote. Their individual contribution is the biggest source of income we have. And it's actually the biggest source to kind of try new things and different things and try bold things. And so I hope people realize just how important membership is. And so when we interrupt their programs, which we only do a couple times a year, but when we do it, it's for a really good reason. It's essential to keep the system moving.
And without that membership, just to be clear, we could not do...
We couldn't. We would do no local programming. We would do a third of the national program we would do, and I think the system would in fact crumble because there aren't that many. There are increasingly less corporate funders, and even the people who write big checks, whether it's big individual philanthropists or foundations, never want to be first. They want to know they're reacting to something that people want. Even people who want to do good in something that's accepted. So if you say to them, "Oh, by the way, I can't even get people who watch this to support it," like, well, then I'm not going to support it. If you can't get the audience itself, right, at sometimes at modest amounts, right, to write you a check once a year, well, then I don't want to come in on this either. So there's a real ripple effect to membership.
It's so funny. People say, well, you're not into ratings. Okay, well, we may not be into ratings per se in the way you were when you headed up NBC, but membership is commensurate to ratings. That being said, do the other money part. The federal issue, the congressional piece of this, those in Congress who, come on, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, let's not play the big bird game. Let's not play the game of rhetoric. Let's have a real discussion about it. Put it in context for us, Neil.
Here's what's sort of missing a little bit in the presidential debate. What public television...
By the way, excuse me for interrupting. We're taping this right before. It'll be relevant after, no matter what happens.
That's exactly true. And it increasingly is an issue in Congress no matter what. The better way to think about public television, this is the most successful public-private partnership ever. This is an example where for every dollar we get, we raise 5 to 6 times as much from the private sector. And when a certain president heard this, he said, that's great. And that president was Ronald Reagan. Right? So when Ronald Reagan said, that's exactly what government should do. Now that said, the amount of money is so small. It's less than $1.35 per taxpayer per year. If we got rid of this, you would never even notice it in your tax structure. It's less than a subway ride. And for that, imagining that we take a multiple of 5 or 6 times a year, so much good comes out of that for so many people. Of all things to focus on, this would have virtually no impact on the deficit. So I think there are a lot of other issues. This is really a political game to play. And the big losers will be the American people.
Finally, Neil, I just want to ask on the local side. The experiment continues on the other side of the river. We don't know how things will play out, but it's a constant challenge, probably more challenging than ever. If it were not for WNET stepping in, there would not be, not probably, there would not be public television in New Jersey. The NJTV experiment been challenging on a lot of levels. NJ Today, seen on WNET and on NJTV. What is it that you hope for the station and its future, and ultimately for the viewers of it?
On the one hand, I think we've had incredible success in the first year. We're doing more local programming than we thought we would do or we promised to do. We're being more efficient than I thought we would be, taking advantage of all the infrastructure at WNET. I think what I would like to see as we do more and more programming, more news, more arts, more culture, more history, that the population of New Jersey, both individually and in the corporate world and the foundation world, we'll step up a little bit. Now they've seen that we're for real, that we're serious, we're dedicated, because we have a modest goal in New Jersey, which is to break even. Right? That's our modest goal.
Not even hate. We want to make millions.
Right. We just want to break even.
Break even.
Right? Because I think I think it's so important that New Jersey be the only state that doesn't have public television would be wrong. And to my core, I think that's wrong.
That's why you did it.
That's why I did it. So I hope that the public will sense our determination, and that we get to see more support from them.
Thank you, Neil. It is the 50th birthday, the 50th anniversary of WNET, and we say congratulations as your partner.
And we say we're delighted you're part of the family.
Yeah, and it's our 25th of the Caucus Educational Corporation, and that's why we're here. That's why the partnership works, and thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Steve.
All the best.
Take care.
This is One-on-One from the Tisch WNET studios here at Lincoln Center. Good guests, good shows. We'll be right back right after this. Thank you.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Hackensack University Medical Center, Berkeley College, TD Bank, Qualcare Inc., a local managed care company covering 750,000 New Jersey residents, the law firm of Gibbons PC, and by Verizon Communications. Promotional support provided by the Star Ledger and NJ.com, Everything Jersey, and by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association and its monthly magazine, New Jersey Business. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with St. Joseph's Healthcare System.